He is a superhero in every sense of the word.
Superman is a pretty popular choice. In 2017, Tegan Pettit became the Man of Steel, just one member of the Justice League Kids.
You're gonna be like floating in the air.
When he was born, his parents, Ryan and Britton, were told he had two options. He could fight, or...
And then the other option was to just go ahead and take him home and he would pass away that weekend. And, you know, when you're faced with all those options and decisions and you just barely had a baby, it's pretty overwhelming.
Tegan fought through countless procedures. Justice League Kids
Awesome, thanks, man.
went viral. Tegan was just 9 then.
Mom.
He's 13 now, and he still has that suit, as a reminder of a time when he stopped looking at his heart as his kryptonite, and instead saw difference as power.
After that, I was like, oh yeah, my heart condition, it's cool. So it's kind of, instead of making me different in a bad way, kind of feels like after the Superman thing, it made me different in a cool way.
Oh, wait, we're missing the eyes. Wait.
All of this comes out of the Rosie's own pocket.
Yeah, good job.
The costumes alone can cost upwards of $1,500 a piece. They're all custom made for each kid. Their kindness isn't just for those who are suffering illness and disabilities either. In 2018, this shoot, featuring 15 kids dressed as the Avengers, was all about bullying.
I was getting bullied a lot.
Benson Bateman is Spider-Man, and a remarkable thing happened when he took his picture to school.
They were just like, wow, that's crazy, we're sorry, and just left me alone.
They really apologized. Wow.
Yep, lives changed by reimagining the way they see themselves.
That's crazy.
Aww.
Costumes don't always have to mask our real selves.
He's touching it. Oh.
Sometimes, as the Rosies have shown, they can bring out our hearts, too.
People see these photos, they're like, what do the photos do? Like, you know, they're just photos. But I mean, they have like a deep impact, like emotional impact.
If we can help them forget about their disease, their illness for a few hours, you know, like, it's all worth it.
Guys, I still got a couple students that are trying to get in. I don't know why they aren't able to get in. Arts and Humanities, last week we did do gobble, 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 but this is 4th grade. It's in texture and values. You guys, last thing we did with you all was really Byzantine is what we're going to be talking about most as it goes into this next section X area. And so some of you may be here from Mr. Enrique's class. I'm going to try and post. Yeah, I've got a check-in sheet. I'm going to post them here in just a second, both of them. Before and when I say both, if you're here from Mr. Enrique's class, I'll have a separate one for you all. Where did it go? I had it saved. It didn't open. You're going to see that this week there is a Google Slides presentation. It's the presentation that I was using in creating the lessons, but in the recording, but it would not record the lesson this week. And so we're going to do the check-in at the end of the lesson. We're just going to go through the PowerPoint real quick, or the slides. This is also your review for your DBA coming up. And so, and I know this is not how most people get it. Most people go through like your regular presentation. I don't do it that way. I like to kind of see what's going over on the left-hand side so I can remind myself what's coming up. We're looking at 14th to 15th century Italian art this week. It's not all Italian. Some of it kind of gets into a little bit of German towards the end. The module is accessible, and you will need to go into it because while this is a DBA review for the discussion-based assessment we're going to have, this is also the last module that'll be part of your comprehensive assessment that that you will also be doing next week. And so just a couple quick reminders. The last day for us to turn in grades is the 15th, which doesn't make any sense to me considering we're here till I think the 17th or 18th. I don't know. But so your DBA week will be next week. For Mr. Mcguire's class, I know Mr. Enrique, you schedule appointments with him. With my classes, you will come between 9 and 11 a.m. Monday through Friday of next week and be able to take your DBA. Most everyone who was in my class took it. If John, if you've taken the DBA alternative assessment, if you had to take that multiple choice assessment because you missed the DBA, first of all, yeah, it's not fun. You got to retake it over and over again to get over half and all that good stuff. But yeah, you've got to give me a minute. For some reason, everything got graded this past weekend. Nothing is sticking, so they're looking at my infinite canvas, my grading. I mean my canvas because it's not transferring at all. Hopefully that'll be fixed this evening. John, if you don't care, check it tonight and get back with me and let me know tomorrow if it got resolved. I appreciate it. You'd be surprised how many students don't pay attention to whether or not their stuff gets credited or not to begin with. All right. So again, this is, you're just joining us. This is the DBA review, essentially, for your discussion-based assessment based on the art of the 14th and 15th century as it leads from the Byzantine into the Renaissance area. Again, we're pretty much still in that area of, this is a very Eurocentric class. We're looking at Italy again, Germany, that again, European area, not touching on Asia in 14th to 15th century because nothing happened in Asia, you know, for a couple thousand years. Sure. All right, so we're going to talk about though what's going on in Italy in this time and around this time, politically, socially, religiously, in the evolved evolution of literature. You know, before we saw little very beginnings of picturesque types, you know, of literature being created. Then we saw the in the Greeks and Romans, you had you know, the Iliad and the Odyssey start to come out, that kind of thing. But we're looking specifically at in literary, Dante, Petrarch, Boccaccio. If you aren't familiar with Dante, you'll have to read. Everybody has to read Dante's Inferno. It's required to become an adult. Religiously, you had a great schism during this time. Socially, there were plagues, upheaval. And politically, you saw a couple different things going on. While most of the world was dominated by larger monarchies and so forth, in this area in Italy, you've got these little city states, these little commonwealths that are getting developed. And they, because they're smaller, independent little mini states, they are able to accumulate more wealth. That wealth is typically dominated and controlled by the church. And so the church, because they control most of the money, they therefore control most of the art, because the art is sort of that. Close this window so you don't hear the dogs barking so much. The art is reflective of where the money comes from, and so money's coming through the church. Generally, what we're going to see until the very end here, we'll talk about Hieronymus Bosch at the end, and he was kind of an outlier. But most all the work that we're going to see is going to be related to religion, related to the church. As we look artistically at what happened, Byzantine, late classical, Hellenistic, and as we transition into this 14th and 15th century as it enters into that Renaissance period, we're going to look at those transitions from these deep carvings you see here where they're still using the linear forms to in the bottom image you see sort of what we saw happen in the Hellenistic, where we see more free floating forms that are more deeply recessed, creating a deeper three-dimensionality, or that relief, that three-dimensional relief. We're going to be looking at that stiffness in the bodies is beginning to be replaced with more naturalism. Things begin to flow a little bit better. We'll see the advancements in the draperies we saw towards the end of the Hellenistic. We remember, if you remember, Nike with all the flowing stuff, and we're going to see that sort of progress again through the 14th and 15th centuries. Prior to the 14th century, Italian painting was dominated by the Byzantine style, that flat frontal figures, formal gestures, feet seeming to float above the ground. gold leaf backgrounds, and all that kind of thing. During this 14th and 15th century, we're going to see figures begin to get volume and depth. Composition becomes a little more exquisite, softness, and a little more color added. We're going to see striking naturalism in both the figural poses, the expressions demonstrated. Again, this is a departure from the Byzantine, everybody kind of that stiff, look. And again, when you're discussing this in your discussion-based assessment, how does progress show? Think about from the archaic period, when that archaic smile, and as things have progressed through those, classical, the Greek, the Hellenistic, and now into this Italian, we're seeing a progression of naturalism, things becoming less stiff, more free-flowing. And so now we're also going to be looking at the impression of depth becoming, and when I say depth, not just in relief like we've seen before, but now the overlapping of figures, the illusion of that spatial depth created by single point perspective that'll particularly be advanced, we'll see towards the later half of the 14th and into the 15th century. Giotto di Bondone was one of the first artists I was familiar with. In art school, we learned that he was the father of painting. He's the guy who invented painting. Giotto worked differently than a lot of the predecessors. He worked from observation. In other words, he generally had a model, or in the first perspective, he was working in spaces that represented. So he wasn't just trying to create it from his brain. He was looking at these images and looking at these objects, and therefore getting a better understanding of how they were reflected in that depth and that perspective. His work has that true substance and solidity, got that way by transforming the dimensionality of sculpture into painting. So what he's looking to try to do is recreate the idea that you're looking at a three-dimensional thing in a two-dimensional space. Now, we can say that artists were trying to do that all along, but he was really beginning to get a little more firmly than anyone else. And we see that his predecessors all worked from what he understood. His composition displays incredible artistic skill, creative and illusionistic depth, again, overlapping of figures. Not only does he make use of sort of the overlapping, we see the perspective as things get smaller, as they go back in the distance. We also see sometimes in his work what we call aerial perspective, where you see how the air itself mutes the colors that are further away and that sort of thing. The poses, expressions, and the movement. Let me let some more students in here. Of the figures are also engaging, naturalistic, and visually confirming that departure from that Byzantine flat, static figure stuff that we saw earlier. I got to study in Florence for a summer, and I'll tell you right now, it was the greatest summer of my life. It's one of the best times ever. Italy is fantastic. For the pension we stayed in, we could see El Duomo. That's what they call Santa Maria del Fiore. And this is the cathedral. That's the central to Florence. It's huge. The dome is absolutely enormous. It dominates the city skyline. But one thing that's kind of interesting about it, and you'll see this as you go through the module, it didn't focus on this vertical movement that we saw, particularly at the end of the medieval times, where we see everybody trying to reach for the skies and make things shoot up. It's got an enormous interior space. It's one of these horizontally really emphasized. It's longer than it is tall. It's mostly about trying to accommodate everybody in that city. The idea was they were going to create this cathedral that was so huge, so paramount, that every single person in the city would be able to come and celebrate there. And so it's beautiful. The doors are these magnificently carved and gold leaf doors. To this day, I think bronze, actually, they're bronze doors. They're fantastic. You can go up and touch them. They're amazing. You can go into the cathedral and you can actually go up into the dome area. At least you could when I was there in 1990s, 91. So it's been a minute. Back in the day, you could go in, and I suppose you can go in it still, hopefully. But we're looking though at how Florence had this big, lots of money. They had the big church, and because they had all that great stuff, they controlled a lot of the art. Well, it didn't last forever, because it wasn't too long, around 1260, that Siena defeated Florence in the Battle of Monteperti. It was the home of that Sienese school of painting. And in this Sienese school, and to this day, if you go to Florence, there are two major art schools that to this very day churn out the some of the greatest artists working in the world. The style of the Sienese school kind of grew out of that Byzantine tradition. We're going to see this, some of the same most famous painters that the module will talk about: Duccio, Martini, the Lorenzetti brothers. Stylistically, they're going to look at the volumetric figures and how they the postures, the poses, the expressions, each of these individualized. Not like everybody's all doing the same thing. Think about Syrian, Byzantine art. When we looked, everybody was just the same repeated characters over and over again. Every one of these is very individualistic, very different. And again, they're demonstrating that transition to that naturalistic form of art. If you could just say that phrase over and over again, that's going to help you out in your discussion-based assessments. Brilliant use of color by Duccio. This is the naturalism of Natural Pisano, and the delicate ornamentation, extravagant costumes, and formal pomp and circumstance that's usually associated with that French courtly style. These again are departures from that Byzantine style and the use of realistic elements. Byzantines didn't have a lot of use of realistic things. We're going to look also too at this in this gold leaf piece here. Gorgeous. Again, we look at the color, look at the bright ornamentation, but there's perspective being demonstrated. If you notice this tree that's off in the distance, there's a path that goes back. The path gets smaller, goes back into space. The tree is very small comparative to the figures in the front. We don't see the overlapping so much, but they're making use of that, the burgeonings of that single point perspective. Let's see, I got another student. All right. The Lorenzetti brothers were also students of Duccio. They were schooled in that Sienese tradition, but they combined the drama of Pisano with that naturalism of Giotto. If you look at this bottom right-hand piece, this is an exquisite example. This demonstrates that illusion of space, depth, perspective being created. Not only do we see sort of that single, again, the beginnings, the understanding of the single point perspective, we see the tops of the buildings kind of coming down, the bottoms of the buildings kind of coming up to a point, and we're seeing a nice sort of side angle, creating that depth. But we're also seeing overlapping images. The horse in front of or is behind the building, for instance, we know that that has been creating layers of space and depth. And we're also sort of beginning to get the understandings of that aerial perspective. These are part of these big sweeping murals they had in Siena's town hall. During the 15th century, one of the main stylistic influences or evolutions that came along was this idea of trompe-l'oeil. Trompe-l'oeil is the idea of creating the illusion that something that's three-dimensional exists in a two-dimensional space. And again, if you look down at those four images at the bottom in particular, those look like recesses in a wall, and then inside those recesses are three-dimensional sculptures. That's not what's going on. Those are two-dimensional paintings given the impression of three-dimensional space. That's a trompe-l'oeil. That's the very early beginnings of that trompe-l'oeil understanding of how that you create that illusion. And so as we look as it goes into the 15th century and 14th century, we're still considering all the money's coming from the church. So the symbolism, the iconography that we typically see is going to be reflective of church. It's important to recognize that, because here at the very end, we're going to talk about again Hieronymus Bosch and how he's an outlier. Well, he's an outlier because his symbolism was a little different. If we look at these religiously inspired things, we're going to see very calm paintings, very stately things that show, again, the dog represents fidelity, very, very sort of normal, if you will, in the way of representation of symbolism. The wife is simply near the bed, she's domestic, so that's very sort of simple use of symbolism that was typical of those religiously inspired works of art and religiously paid for, commissioned by the church. As we look to the 14th and 15th century, we see this emphasis again, that single vanishing point And when we talk about a single point perspective and a vanishing point, what we're talking about is off the distance, universally, when you look off directly in front of the viewer, along the horizon line where the sky meets the earth, if you will, you're going to find the horizon point, or the vanishing point. And the vanishing point is where all lines that are running parallel the direction you are viewing, all the lines that run parallel in that direction are going to converge at a single point we call the vanishing point. That's where, as they go back into space, they're going to go so far back they appear to vanish. And so as we look at how that applies to these works of art, if we look at the lines that form the tops of the windows, the bottoms of the windows, all of the lines that form these boards that run parallel in the ceiling, the edges of the table, all of these lines point back to a single point, a point back on the horizon line, back and there where those things would converge and appear to vanish. That single point perspective. So last but not least, we're going to talk about Hieronymus Bosch. Hieronymus Bosch was, I don't know why that image is so small here, but he was a real outlier, again, because he didn't really work for the church so much. I mean, he did a lot of church-inspired things, and he did some work for the church, don't get me wrong, but he was often commissioned by independent, wealthy individuals who wanted something remarkable for their own homes. This is a triptych. It's one of the most famous works of art that he's ever created, and everyone will, when we talk about Hieronymus Bosch, this is the piece that almost all people reflect back to. It's a triptych. Triptych means it's 3 paintings that work together to complete one work of art. Triptychs often worked like altar pieces. These were 2 doors, if you will, that you can imagine would close and fold over on that centerpiece that would then create these doors that you could open up and see what was inside. They would often be at the front of a church near the altar. That's what I call altar pieces. And the priest could open them up and talk about the images inside. This one specifically is completely wild and crazy comparatively to everything else that we see in that during this time, particularly with the use of symbolism. Some of the symbols, we don't have any clue what they represent. We see in the left panel, God is represented, represents a dumbfounded Adam with a sly looking Eve. The garden is strewn with fanciful animals. It's dominated by a pink fountain. Panel on the right depicts hell, and it's got demons devouring the tortured and the damned. In the center, we see what might be they considered purgatory between paradise and hell. We see the panel has lots of fantastic landscape, birds, nudes, fertility symbols, fruit, all kinds of weird things going on. We always know that animals, we don't always know, but we generally understand that birds, animals of any kind, fruit, food of just about any kind, these are often symbolism used by artists. Any work of art that has meaning behind it is probably going to be found in those types of symbols. And so when we see a work of art like this littered, quite literally, with all kinds of symbolism that's unique for the period in time, it's important that we kind of take a moment and look at why it's different. So, you know, first of all, as stylistically goes, the progress, this is almost a step backwards in some respects as much as it is a step forward. If you look at the centerpiece, he's making great use of aerial perspective. Again, how the space, the air between us and things far away from us affects those things. We see the distant mountains, the colors muted, that represents that aerial perspective. We see that the things further away are smaller. The thing that's that single point perspective, things going further away get smaller, they get farther away from it. We see overlapping and that sort of thing. But the figures are fairly simplistic. You know, the drapery is pretty good, but we don't recognize this as the leap forward into, you know, the firm understanding that we're going to see the Renaissance artists have. But we do want to make sure that everybody knows who Hieronymus Bosch is and kind of where he fits in the scheme of things. That is essentially our DBA review. Again, you're going to want to go through the module because there is stuff in the module that's going to be included in the comprehensive final exam. It's not going to be covered in the DBA. Lots of stuff from the beginning of history, art history, all the way to where it would say now. every single module there you really need to go through. I wish I could prepare you better for it. I will be posting Friday some type of review, but it's if you're in my class, you know I don't like this class because I think it has some issues with too much content to cover, and so I don't have access to the questions they even ask, which is great. We're gonna do the check-in real quick. There are two. If you are in my class, I'm gonna put mine in first. If you're in Mr. Enrique's, please hold on. I'll put it in. There we go. If you are in my class, please click and the chat now. Please click that and fill out your daily check-in. If you're in Mr. Enrique's class, give me 1 second. Guys, if you aren't filling these out, you don't get attendance. I'm just letting you know. If you are in Mr. Enrique's class and did not fill out a checkout for him, you can fill this one out. I'll put it in the chat now. It does have too much stuff. It's way too much stuff. Literally, oops, hold on. Don't send me a message yet. Hold on. Mr. Enrique's class is in there now. If you click that one, make sure if you're at the top left, it'll say Enrique's Arts and Humanities, or it'll say Mr. Mcguire's Arts and Humanities. Make sure you're clicking on the right link and in the correct check-in. Right now, I have 9 students in mine. That's not even half of what we should have for mine. So please make sure you're filling out the check-in if you want attendance credit. I get paid to be here whether you're here or not. You're the ones who get the harassing emails from the VLA. Back to the content. Yeah, it's way too much. It's enough. It's literally 3 art history classes I took in college, and all the same content combined into one high school course that's done online. 1 day a week, not 2 days a week. I don't know how you do it. I don't envy you for it. If you'll notice, I kind of grade on the little lenient side because I think it's a truckload of work to try to take in. And I will say, yeah, and these like, yeah, 16 pages. Well, if you think that's crazy, the elementary school modules I have, they have 2 modules. There's really 2 modules in each unit, and each module will have 24 to 28 pages. That's elementary. The middle school modules have 3 pages. Yeah. I don't even get me started on this stuff. So that's one of the reasons I really hate this class. This is one of the only classes, because there's so much content, I can't create lessons to keep up with it. We got to use what they have. And also because we're kind of team teaching, it's just terrible. And so it's a lot of content to go through. So you all have my deepest sympathies. Still only 19 for my class. Get those filled out. Click now if you have not already. You missed your Mr. Enrique's class. 7 here for Mr. Enrique's class. If you are, I'm going to look right now. If your name is not here and you are from Mr. Enrique's class, some of you are from mine, I think. If your name's on here and you're from my class, you've clicked the wrong one. You need to go to this one and make sure your name is on this one. Some of you probably did both. It's all right too, I guess, but just make sure your name is on the correct one. Once you've done that, get out of here. Have a great day. Bye, guys. Thank you for coming. That the PowerPoint or the presentation is posted. The lesson that is being recorded now will be posted at a later date, this date, hopefully. Have a great day, guys. Thank you for coming. If you're here for Mr. Mcguire's class, it was nice to meet you. See you guys. Bye, guys. Is mine on yours? Carter, mine's open right now. Let's take a look. Let me refresh. I got 20 and I don't see you. Yep, I see you right there, but you're good to go. The one that says my name at the top. Christopher, I don't mean to be smart aleck about it. Yeah, but mine says at the top, just make sure that you do click the one that has my name at the top on the left. And if you put it on Mr. Enrique's, it's not the end of the world. Just make sure you put it on mine also, because I won't, be using his. He'll use his. Thank you. Appreciate it. You can't go wrong that way. There you go, Christopher. All right. You too. Thank you, Sophia. Have a great weekend. Do something fun. Bye, guys. Start coming Monday at between 9 and 11. Get these DBAs over with. Don't wait till Friday. You know how much I love that. I don't like that at all. Don't wait till Friday at 10:45 and then walk in the meeting to take your DBA. Come early. And don't miss it. Guys, there's a few of you left here. If you don't miss it. If you were one of the people who missed before, you had to pick that really bad, awful alternative, which is a really bad multiple choice. You get 100% if you come to mine. I'll make sure you get 100%. It's my job to teach you. If you don't know it, I'm going to make you learn it. All right, guys, have a great day. All right, I'm in the meeting. I'm going to go to another meeting because that's all I do is go to meetings all day. Bye, guys. See you all. Thanks for participating. And I mean that literally. Thanks for all the questions. A lot of good questions today. Yeah, Alicia, go right ahead. Alicia, did you have a question? I don't see it. Let me go back and look. Hold on. Oh, yes. Okay. About what we were watching earlier. Yeah, and I forgot to mention that. The last week of class, you all will be done, but they want us to, we got to have class anyway. We got to take attendance. And so what I'm going to do is show you all how to use Sketchpad 5.1 to make movie posters, magazine covers, just like you saw in that video at the beginning, which I think is really cool. If you've got somebody who you think could use that type of inspiration, if it's a neat Christmas gift, and it's free. If you can get a picture of them and a cool background, you can put it on your computer and sort of print it out, whatever that'll cost you. It's a great way to make Christmas. All right, guys. Does that answer your question? Thank you, Alicia. Have a great day. Bye, guys.